Commonly known as B.F. Skinner, his full name Burrhus Frederick Skinner, was a man who believed in behaviorism. Behaviorism is a belief that all behavior is learned through conditioning. The way that you experience conditioning is through interaction with the environment. Also, he believed that behavior could be studied systematically. Skinner demonstrates this belief in a quote saying, "I get my books out of life, not out of their books." This belief of behaviorism is what shaped Skinner, as well as what he used to shape education. B.F. Skinner grew up in Pennsylvania, about 30 minutes from the New York state line. His father was a lawyer, and his mother was constantly reminding her son to be aware of what other people think. In 1922, he became the valedictorian of his graduating class, mainly after gaining a reputation for debating with his teachers regarding intellectual matters. He then attended Hamilton College outside of Utica, New York, where he wrote short stories. One specific story written by Skinner was praised by the great poet Robert Frost. He graduated Hamilton in 1926 and decided that he wanted to become a writer, even though his parents were against the idea. He moved back into his parents' home in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where he realized he had nothing to say in his writing. He then enrolled in graduate school at Harvard in psychology. Skinner was very intrigued by Loeb and Crozier, who believed that real science depends on controlling experimental results rather than observation. Because of this, Skinner believed that the foundation of behavioral analysis was the control of experimental variables. Skinner designed an experiment using rats involving a box that delivered food to the rat when it pushed a lever. It was troublesome for him that he needed to make a distinction of his work from Pavlov's. Pavlov trained dogs to react to a specific stimulus. Following the ring of a bell, which is the stimulus, he would feed that dog a treat. After repeating the steps several times, the dog's mouth would salivate after the ringing of the bell and would expect a treat, conditioned to do so. Skinner explained that his experiment was different because Pavlov used dogs and recorded the response and the stimulus. Skinner only used rats and pigeons and was only interested in the lever-pressing behavior. After leaving Harvard in 1936, he married a woman named Yvonne Blue. He continued to be scrutinized by those around him and was especially targeted by an article in Life magazine for the crib he designed for his daughter. The crib was enclosed and used plexiglass, allowing the mother to look in and watch her child. The crib was also heated. The idea was originally thought of by his wife, who asked him to create a safe crib for their new daughter. Life compared it to his rat experiments, accusing him of imprisoning his child. He had designed it with the intentions to make life better for both the mother and the child. However, it did not come off that way to the critics. His beliefs and ideas became extremely controversial, but Skinner continued to believe that operant science would make a better world. In 1953, one of Skinner's daughters, Deborah, was enrolled in a Cambridge school where she struggled specifically with the mathematics. Teachers assigned problems and would only help some students. Certain students would finish early, and others would struggle. Skinner felt that something could surely be done to help better the education process. In schools, and then in his autobiography, Skinner recorded his feelings on that day. He said, on November 11, 1953, "I made a positive move. It was Father's Day at Shady Hill, and with other fathers I sat in the rear of Debbie's 4th grade arithmetic class. The students were at their desks, dissolving a problem written on the blackboard. The teacher walked down the aisles, looked at their work, pointing out a mistake here and there. A few students soon finished and were impatiently idle. Others, with growing frustration, strained. I suddenly realized that something had to be done. Possibly through no fault of her own, the teacher was violating two fundamental principles. The students were not being told at once whether their work was right or wrong. A corrected paper seen 24 hours later could not act as a reinforcer. And they were all moving at the same pace, regardless of preparation or ability. He then designed a machine that would allow students to be positively reinforced when they received the correct answer. He encouraged many large companies to run with the idea to produce better machines and assured them that it would be revolutionary for teaching. However, companies shied away from the idea, and educators knew they would lose their jobs as well as the purpose, and everything would have to change, so once again Skinner's idea was shut down. He truly believed that this machine would be as popular as the television, and so it was one of his greatest disappointments. He was positive that education depended on some sort of revolution. Although B.F. Skinner may be very controversial, he absolutely made great contributions to education, contributions that follow us today. The main contribution that comes out of the work of Skinner would be that of positive reinforcement and punishment in the classroom. As a student in elementary school, I can clearly remember, although not at the time, of how these things shaped my behavior. Specifically in kindergarten, where timeout was a form of punishment, I remember constantly fearing the timeout, and I even had nightmares about the timeout chair. For many students, this is the case, and punishment is feared, so therefore we try and make better choices to avoid it. I can also very clearly recall positive reinforcement as shaping my behavior. In the 4th grade, my teacher had a giant candy jar resting on her desk. When you choose to participate and answer a question, she would give you a piece of candy, or when you did your homework. I honestly can't remember one time she had an issue with a student misbehaving, and we all loved her, and we loved being rewarded for our good work. So, human nature is that we desire to feel praise and we fear criticism. So, B.F. Skinner truly was onto something that specific day when he visited his daughter's classroom. When he realized that students, in order to learn effectively, need positive and reinforcement and punishment. Today, teachers use his methods in some way or another in the classroom to ensure a better education. Just in my own experiences in teaching and interning in elementary school classes, I have seen it, without realizing it until now, that I was using Skinner's methods. When the child was struggling to get through his or her classwork, I would talk to them and remind them that if we buckled down and focused, that we'd be able to play afterward. But if that didn't work, I'd have to remind them that if we didn't, we couldn't play, and it would also become homework. So whether we are aware that we're using positive reinforcement or punishment, it definitely is a big part of our lives, especially for education. So B.F. Skinner has contributed this to our education process and clearly helps shape us and allows us to grow.